It is 12:02, so we'll get started. My name is Teresa Larson. I am a researcher at the Transforming Communities Institute at Utah State, and I am the technical facilitator for this continuing education session today. If you run into any problems or issues surrounding Zoom, I'm the person that you will want to reach out to. So keep that in mind. You can reach me through an individual message through the chat, or you can email me, which can be found on the meeting invitation that you were sent through Zoom. And before we get started, I do want to provide the Utah State University land acknowledgement, and that is, as a land-grant institution, Utah State University campuses and centers reside and operate on the territories of the 8 tribes of Utah, who have been living, working, and residing on this land from time immemorial. These tribes are the Confederated Tribes of the Goshute Indians, Navajo Nation, Ute Indian Tribe, Northwestern Band of Shoshone, Paiute Indian Tribe of Utah, San Juan Southern Paiute, Skull Valley Band of Goshute, and White Mesa Band of the Ute Mountain Ute. We acknowledge these lands carry the stories of these nations and their struggles for survival and identity. We recognize elders, past and present, as peoples who have cared for and continue to care for the land. In offering this land acknowledgement, we affirm Indigenous self-governance history, experiences, and resiliency of the Native people who are still here today. We thank you all for being here, and we are excited to get started. Today, our presentation is Mind-Body Bridging and is being presented by our friend Derek Tollefson. He is a professor in the USU Social Work Department and the director of the iSystem Institute. Along with Derek, Kevin Webb is another one of our. He'll be chiming in and providing some insight, and he is the co-director of the iSystem Institute. As we go through Derek's session today, you are able to keep your camera off if you so choose. Like I said at the very, very beginning, we do record these and we do put them on YouTube, if that is something of concern to you. And please ensure, again, that your Zoom name matches what you would like on a continuing education certificate, or if you need proof of attendance, so we can make sure that so we have that information correct in our system. If you do want continuing education credits for this session, you do need to stay for the entirety of the session, and then complete the follow-up survey that will be made available at the end of the full session and in the follow-up email that you receive. Thank you all for being here again, and I will turn the time over to Derek and Kevin to share with us their presentation about mind-body bridging.
Great, thank you so much. We're happy to be with you today, and look forward to this session together. As was said, I'm Derek Tollefson, professor of social work and director of the iSystem Institute at Utah State University, which is the home of mind-body bridging. So, long story short, Utah State University is now the proud owner of the intellectual property around mind-body bridging. And so the mission of the Institute is to take mind-body bridging out to the world. Part of what we do is we train and certify clinicians in mind-body bridging. And at some point along the way, we'll get some in the chat a flyer that you can see about an upcoming more in-depth workshop for clinicians. We'll also put a website up there where you can get more information about the certification process itself, which is a 2-semester-long courses that people can take for continuing education credit. So we'll put that. See, Teresa's putting that in the chat now. So I'll be taking the lead in this, but with me today is my friend and colleague Kevin Webb, who knows a lot more about mind-body bridging and has worked in mind-body bridging a lot longer than I have. In fact, he trained me. So and he was trained by the developer of Mind Body Bridging, Dr. Stanley H. Block. And I've received, of course, some training from him as well over the years, but I just want to acknowledge that Kevin is the OG in Mind Body Bridging. So Kevin, will you just introduce yourself a little bit further?
Hello, I'm Kevin Webb, and I have been practicing mind body bridging since 2006. So about 17 years. I pioneered it as a mental health modality with various populations over the years. When the intellectual property was donated to Utah State University, I guess I was a part of the intellectual property and got donated to Utah State University also. So it's great to be with Utah State University and great to work with Dr. Tollefson and don't let him kid you. He knows a lot about mind body bridging and you're in for a real treat today.
Thanks, Kevin. So both Kevin and I have worked together in years past on applying mind body bridging in the arena of domestic violence and family violence. And so that's sort of what brought us together many years ago. And we actually published a paper on using the mind body bridging with domestic violence offenders. But he's a good friend, and it's been great working with him over the years. So this we intend to move through our stuff. This will be very experiential. So this is definitely not log on and sort of try to multitask, and because I know how that goes, and I'm guilty of that too. But to get really something out of this experience today, you're going to need to do some of the exercises that we walk you through today, because that'll give you a sense of the kinds of things that we actually do with our clients as we're teaching them mind body bridging. But we like to emphasize that when you work with clients in mind body bridging, it's important that you sort of have a foundation in the practices yourself in order to be effective in your work with others. And I see it's fun to see a lot of familiar names out there. It's good to hear from old friends. I see a few things in the chat. It's good to hear from you all. And feel free to chime in with questions as we go. You can put the questions in the chat. We'll be monitoring that. Teresa will help us with that. We'll try to keep an eye on that, but also just feel free to just chime in and ask a question as we go. What we're going to do today is just give you an introductory experience with it. If you want a deeper dive, like I said, then you have that workshop opportunity coming up in February, or the full certification process that you can engage in. So using the chat, I'm interested to just know, I think we're interested to know how many of you have at least heard of or had some experience with mind body bridging training in the past. So if you just throw some stuff in the chat there, we'll see. Yep, I see some have probably had more of working with me than they should in the chat. That's great. Well, so for some of you, this will be a little bit of a review, but that's okay. We'll have fun with it. And those of you that have had some training in it and have used it, we'd love along the way to hear about your experiences with it. So what I'm going to do is we're going to jump right into some exercises. I'll share my screen and get going that way. All right. Hopefully everybody's able to see that. Give me a thumbs up or a shake head. Thank you. Okay. So just a little bit for those that aren't familiar, what is mind body bridging? Well, some have classified it in sort of the third wave of psychotherapies that fuse together some of the mindfulness traditions with more traditional cognitive behavioral kind of work. And I would say it's that and some, but it's for sure what it is. It's a therapeutic approach that can enhance well-being for anyone. So it's not only beneficial for mental health and those that are coming in, seeking that kind of help from clinicians, but we take it out and teach it to everyone. Our students at USU, we're doing a lot of training with law enforcement. I see one of my law enforcement friends on the call today, and so Lieutenant Barchi, you feel free to chime in as you want, as you've had experience with this. But what we're trying to achieve in mind body bridging is promote a certain kind of self-awareness that leads to improved emotional regulation. In another sense, why is it called mind body bridging? Well, the way that I think about it is we sometimes separate our head from our body, and our head's over here, our mind's over here, while our body is over here doing something else. So we get this sort of two-headed thing going on where we're running thoughts and stories and all kinds of stuff in our head that are not really tied directly to the moment. And in that way, we really get in our way. Instead of just doing or being a verb, meaning we're just living our life and engaged in the moment that we're in, and we're taking care of that moment the best that we know how. We're sort of a noun in that we get really fixated on ourself and our identity, and we get really hypersensitive or overreactive to anything that seems to have a threatening nature to our identity or our sense of how things should be. So we'll get more into that. But the model was developed by Stanley H. Block and his wife and collaborator Carolyn Bryant Block way back in the 90s. And they've been working at getting the model out there and further developing it over time. But they reached a point where they realized it needed a forever home. And so, again, long story short, they donated the intellectual property to Utah State, as well as generously donated some funds that went into an endowment that helps support the work of the Institute. So we're grateful for them and the work that they've done over the years to bring this out there. All right, so what you're going to need is, I should have warned you about this before, you're going to need something to write on. Just any old piece of paper will do just fine. And in the middle of that paper, just write a little circle that you can write a few words in. And then in that circle, I want you to write a situation that's currently troubling to you, that you experience it as a troubling situation. How do you know it's a troubling situation? Well, it's probably pretty obvious to you. It causes you a lot of concern. It draws you to it over and over again. It hijacks your mind. If, like Kevin likes to say, if you don't have a troubling situation, we have a few we could borrow to you from our own lives. So write some words that represent that troubling situation in that small circle. And then around the outside of that circle, just scatter out any thoughts that come to mind about that troubling situation. There's just a couple of rules to follow with this. Don't edit or filter what you write. Just write it, and write it as quickly as you can. So in the end, your page might look a little bit something like this example here, right? So just stressful or troubling situation in the center, and then just scatter your thoughts all about the page. We'll give you a few minutes to do that. maybe just 30 more seconds or so to just continue writing if there's still thoughts coming. And as you finish up scattering your thoughts about the page, down at the bottom somewhere of your page, just include a description of your body tension. Where in your body do you feel any tension as you do this? And what is that tension like? So just scan your body and see if you notice any places where you're experiencing tension.
Some examples of that could include like a knot in your stomach, tight shoulders, tight jaw, gritting your teeth, headache, tight chest, whatever that is. Maybe a few of you could just type in the chat where you notice your body tension. Just quickly type in the chat location and description of your body tension.
We tend to have our favorite spots.
Heart racing, thank you.
Great, thanks, Amy.
Neck and upper body, you want to also describe it. So neck pain, headache, face tension, good. Neck, shoulders, you want to also describe that. What's the description of that? Hot, tight feeling in chest and stomach, good. Shoulders, especially the left one, heaviness in chest. The more specific you are at recognizing this, the better. Tight shoulders, tense, stomach tight, grit teeth. Excellent.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So look at those thoughts that are on that page you just did. We call these maps, mind-body maps. These thoughts, when they get racing and rolling, you can see how they affect you. They can clutter up your mind and they create significant body tension in one or more places throughout your body. So I think we're all familiar with this body tension concept and this concept of a cluttered mind. You know, when your mind gets cluttered up, what is that like? You know, for me, that it just gets kind of racing around and looping, lots of looping thoughts, right? And mind clutter is also when, you know, we're sort of off thinking about something else besides what we're doing right here in the present moment. So we often will attribute our mind clutter and body tension to something specific that we're dealing with. Some kind of troubling situation is responsible for creating that. But in the I system model and mind body bridging, we show folks that what that's connected to is not the troubling situation itself, but to something we call your identity system, or I system for short. So the I system is a mind-body system that we all have that is essentially a self-referential system, meaning our awareness gets sort of turned inward and against ourselves, right? So what identity being who we think we are, what we think we're about, that's what this identity system business is. And when it gets overactive, we'll never get rid of it. We all have this eye system, and actually it is a very beneficial and good thing. But when it gets overactive, it really can cause us to get in our own way. And so when it's overactive, it distorts how one perceives, thinks, feels, and acts. And if the eye system is not recognized for what it is, then it really hinders our moment to moment functioning and causes a lot of unnecessary suffering. Kevin, you want to say a little bit more about the eye system?
Yeah, so a lot of you might think, well, gee, it's that troubling situation in the center that's created all these thoughts on your map. And the truth of the matter is, well, it's a trick question, kind of, because if you didn't have the troubling situation, you probably wouldn't have those thoughts. But the troubling situation itself is not creating all those thoughts on your map. What's creating all those thoughts on your map is this identity system. Because when it becomes overactive, it then starts to produce all these thoughts. And you could look at all these thoughts and swear, man, they're 100% accurate. They're 100% true. But what you don't realize is there's slight distortions. There's slight distortions on and how you perceive, think, feel, and act in relation. And it's created by this identity system. And this identity system does it anytime it feels threatened, anytime it gets things don't happen like we think they should, things aren't going according to plan, then this according to, so all these things are tied to our identity, and our identity, as soon as it feels threatened, begins to produce all this clutter. And the body tension is secondary to that. It comes, it's a mind body system. That's why this is a mind body map. You just mapped out what's in your mind and what you're experiencing in your body.
Good. So the mind clutter and body tension are signals that alert us to the fact that our eye system has become overactive. So that's one of the first foundational things in mind body bridging, is to cultivate awareness of when one experiences significant body tension and mind clutter. That's a sign that this eye system has ratcheted up and become overactive. And so we don't have time today to get too deep into it, but it essentially is altering the parts of our brain that we use, interrupts our executive functioning, sends us into other parts of our brain. They're not as good at problem solving, and we can be much more easily overwhelmed when we're in this particular mind-body state, an overactive eye system.
We basically don't function at our best.
Right.
And we have all kinds of symptoms that result out of that. And in fact, a lot of the symptoms you'll notice in the DSM-5 TR they're produced by this identity system.
Yeah. And I guess it's a good time to mention, that mind-body bridging is very transdiagnostic, meaning the research that's been done so far in our own practice experience has shown that it can be helpful with a wide range of mental health concerns and behavioral concerns. Okay, so what we're going to do next, we're going to have you go back to your map and take a look at all those thoughts that are on the map. And then I want you to put a check mark next to any of the thoughts that really have significant body tension and mind clutter attached to them. These are thoughts that, you can feel it in your body when they come into your awareness. They sort of pack a punch. So any of the thoughts that are on your map that have that quality, put a check mark by them. So we'll do that first. And then once you have those thoughts identified, next to those thoughts, You could just draw a line up like we have on this example map and write down the expectation that you have that's not being met in connection with that thought. And then put that in the form of a should or must statement. So you can see some of the examples here from our workbook, which, by the way, we'll make sure goes in the chat. This is the work-based workbook that we use in our courses and in our introducing people to mind-body bridging. So you're welcome to download that. So for example, here on the map, we have, job stress is the troubling situation. And then one of those thoughts is, I'm anxious about being so far behind. And so the should there is, well, I shouldn't be behind. I should be caught up, right? And then make a note on your page there about how do these expectations affect you, your mind and your body? How do you experience it when those expectations are violated? And this, of course, will connect back to your body tension and mind clutter, right? But just see if you can work on making that connection of, gosh, here is my should or must that was violated. And man, when that happens, I feel that in my chest, or I feel that in my jaw, or I clench in my fists, right? Whatever it is for you. So these should or musts that cause us to feel that, by experience that mind clutter and body tension, they are a certain kind of expectation that we refer to as requirements, or I system requirements. So we're going to learn a little bit more about requirements now. So we're noticing that when certain of these thoughts come into our awareness, they'll trigger us. They'll get us experiencing mind clutter and body tension. So they are what causes the I system to become overactive. And this happens for a specific reason, and that is they're not just ordinary expectations. They're expectations that I like to say with a capital E, that are tied to who we think we are and what we think we're about, or our identity, our sense of identity. And when those are violated, they trigger off this I system process that we're beginning to learn about. So what are requirements? Well, you see the definition there in the slide. They're essentially mental rules that our I system forms moment by moment about the way things should be. How I should be, form requirements about that. Who I think I am and what I think I'm about, what I think I have to be. And then I form requirements. My I system also forms requirements moment by moment about how others should be, or how the world should be, how our jobs should be, how our life should be, right? So the I system is always working or striving towards this ideal. And it's really basically this sort of fantasy of a sort about the perfect life, or the perfect world, or the perfect other people. And that's what it's striving towards.
Now, we all have expectations. Expectations are normal and natural in this world. And we're never going to rid ourselves of having expectations. But these expectations, they pack a punch because they're so closely tied to your identity. So an identity system requirement, when it's not met, you feel devastated. Whereas when any old expectation isn't met, you're simply disappointed. So what's the difference between, oh, that didn't happen. Well, I'm just disappointed. But if you find yourself feeling devastated, it's like a big deal, then you know that that is tied to your identity, and that is an identity system requirement.
Right. So our body has many different systems within it that strive for optimal functioning and continuity. So for example, when we have a temperature regulation system in our body. When our body's temperature goes up too high, what does our body do? It begins to sweat, right? And it just happens naturally because it senses, oh, my temperature is beginning to be out of range of what I feel, what it needs to function optimally. So it sweats, and the sweat reduces our body temperature. On the other side of that continuum, if the body's temperature drops too low, then what happens? What does our body do instinctively? Begins to shiver, right? And it's just automatic. It will start to shiver if your body temperature goes too low because it's trying to restore your body's temperature back into an optimal place. But the eye system is doing that, but unlike our temperature regulation system or the system that regulates our blood pressure and so on, there's actually a really wide range of what can work, and we're still alive and well. And so, but I like to think about this shivering and sweating concept. I think of that as our mind clutter and body tension. When our requirements are violated, immediately our body starts to do a form of shivering and sweating. Like, oh, things aren't what they should be. I am not what I should be. Somebody else is not what they should be. And so we immediately get sucked into that. And then our eye system gets ratcheted up because what it's trying to do is find a way to bring us back to what should be, or get us to what should be, who we think we are, what we think we're about. Okay, so that's how requirements work to trigger off the eye system. Any questions about that so far? The eye system or its requirements? If you have any questions?
If you have any questions, yeah, feel free to type them in the chat if you do have any questions.
Okay. Well, looks like we're all tracking along. So again, Kevin spoke to this a little bit. We all have expectations. They're just a natural part of our experience. When expectations aren't met, we're disappointed. When requirements, which are expectations tied to our eye system, aren't met, we experience that as devastation. We become very, very dysregulated, right? Another way that I like to sort of teach this is, I'll ask you, how many thoughts do you think during a day? Lots, right? Thousands of thoughts pass through our awareness every day. And what percent of those thoughts on a typical day will have any body tension or mind clutter attached to them? Not very many, right? Because they're just sort of thoughts that come and go as we just do our day. But there's some thoughts, when they come into our awareness, they hijack us. They immediately cause us to shiver and sweat, in a sense, and really disrupt things. And that's the kind of thought when it comes in with this, like a thunderstorm comes into the valley, Cache Valley, or where I'm from in the Uinta Basin. It comes in, it announces itself, and it sits around and swirls. And that's what these requirements begin to do. They kick off the ice system process. Okay, so not all expectations are requirements, but all requirements are expectations. So just a fun way to think about that. So what do we do about our requirements? Well, we can't get rid of them, but what we can learn to do is to diffuse them so that they don't cause our ice system to become overactive when they're not met. So on the right there, you see a box of dynamite. It's got a fuse in it. What we can learn to do with our requirements is we're not going to ever get rid of them because we come by our requirements honestly. We all develop requirements. Our ice system is always going to be manufacturing requirements about the ideal way things are supposed to be, and it's just going to always want to strive for that. But what we can do is recognize when a requirement has popped up in the heat of the moment and is ready to draw us into the ice system way of functioning. And when we can learn to see our requirements and sort of befriend them, recognize them, that takes the power away from those requirements. So that's what we do to diffuse a requirement is we just recognize it when it comes up in the heat of the moment. Okay, that's the power of, that takes the power out of the requirement to continue to spin and spin and spin. So anytime you simply become aware of the requirement in the heat of the moment, it begins to disarm it. And that is true of all the other ice system activities that go on, which we won't have time to get into detail about today. But the action of mind-body bridging is awareness. That's the active ingredient of the medicine, if you want to think about it that way, is bringing one's ice system activity into awareness, begins to quiet the ice system, it begins to disarm it, begins to diffuse it. So all of the tools of mind-body bridging have that one central goal, which is to recognize one's ice system is becoming overactive and to rest it or to disarm it so that it becomes back where it should be, operating gently in the background instead of running the show.
So diffusing really is a two-step process. The first step is really what Derek is talking about right now, is just the awareness, the acknowledging it, befriending it, seeing it for what it is, no more, no less. You just see it. That's what got violated. That's what's creating all this is my ice system requirement got violated or wasn't met. And now all these thoughts are about this violated requirement. And then the second step we're going to get to here in just a minute.
Right. So requirements are a bit tricky because we tend to want to think, well, there must be more to this than what Derek and Kevin are saying. There's got to be more to this requirement business. There really isn't. It's recognizing when they pop up, when they're threatening to pull us into the ice system overactivity, and just that awareness and saying, hey, oh, yep, I have a requirement about that. And you kind of smile at it. And then another practice that we're going to teach you shortly is enough to let that requirement go. So in a sense, it's like grabbing onto the requirement and choosing either to continue to hang on to it and let it drag us around, or to recognize that that's what we're doing and go, huh, isn't that interesting? And then release it so that it can not drag us around anymore and suck us in. Okay. Because remember again, that that's what triggers us off into this two-headed thing. So now instead of just doing what the moment has brought us to do, now we're trying to do that with our bodies, but then our mind is out here wrestling with our requirement.
Sometimes people are tempted to want to fix their requirement. Oh, if I just make it more appropriate, because it's unrealistic, and it's not about, I mean, sometimes our requirements are very realistic. They're not always unrealistic. And so we don't have to get rid of them. We don't have to fix them. All we have to do is acknowledge them, and something else Derek's going to teach you in a minute.
Okay. Well, here's just a little more. I think we've kind of gone through this enough. But we might have a requirement like life should be fair. And then when we recognize that, we notice the signals of the mind clutter and the body tension, simply say to yourself, yeah, there again is my requirement that life should be fair. Okay. And then on with your life. Instead of getting bogged down in the thought and having that thought spin up into other things that we'll talk a little bit more about later. All right. So now what I want you to do is take your paper that you have, and you can flip it over, or you can do another, just get another blank sheet of paper out. And write the same smaller circle in the center of the page, just like you did before. And then write the same troubling situation. The page references, by the way, on the slide have to do with the workbook that you're getting a copy of. So in the same the same circle, write the same troubling situation that you used with the first map. And now what I want you to do is just to put your pen down once you have the troubling situation in the circle, and get comfortable in your chair or whatever you're doing. Just shift around and get comfortable. And now what I want you to do is just take a few minutes to listen to the background sounds in the room that you're in. And then as you're doing that, you can feel with your fingers the table that you're sitting at. If a thought distracts you, just return to the sounds and the sensations. So I'll be quiet for a minute or so and allow you to just tune into those sensations with your senses. Continue to focus on your hearing, what you're hearing in the background, your sense of touch. Now I want you to take your pen in your hand. Notice what it feels like to hold it. And now as you continue to listen to the background sounds, noticing the pen in your hand, I want you to look at the troubling situation in that circle, and now just write whatever comes to mind as you think about it. And as you write, watch the ink flow on the page. Listen to the background sounds. Just write what comes to mind. There's no right or wrong. It's just what it is. Continue to be open to your senses as you do this. Sense your body as it sits in the chair. Feel your feet on the ground. And you feel like you've written what's coming. We don't force thoughts, but we don't hold any back either. We just let it flow. Just down at the page, once again, just note, describe your body, your tension that you might feel. Describe it. Where is it? What does it feel like? Okay, now what we want to do is just compare map 1 and map 2. What I like to do this is I'd like to have you go back to your first map, and at the top of it or somewhere on it, I want you to describe that map with 1 or 2 words. If you were to give that map a name, what would you name it? And then do the same thing for the second map. How would you describe it in 1 or 2 words? So without getting into any of your personal information, what I think is fun to do with the chat is just have you put in your names or your word or two for map 1 and map 2. So just throw those in the chat. Map 1, this word or 2 words. Map 2, this word or those 2 words. Let's have you do that. Great. Thanks, Taya.
Grief, consolation. Map 1, blaming. Map 2, accepting. Map 1, fear. Map 2, surrender.
Hmm. This is great. Keep it coming.
Map 1, hectic stress. Map 2, calm and hopeful. Map 1, life stresses. Map 2, the truth.
Hmm.
Map 1, negative. Map 2, hopeful. Map 1, overwhelming. Map 2, empowering. Map 1, heavy. Map 2, lighter. Map 1, stress. Map 2, understanding why. Map 1, frustrated. Map 2, calm. Map 1, hopeless. Map 2, hopeful. Thank you.
This is wonderful. Thanks everybody for sharing. Super, super fun to see that shift. Good, thank you. Work stress negative, life stress more positive. Very good. Good, so it looks like most of you experienced this shift in orientation towards the troubling situation, right? So often when we do this exercise, you experience less tension on the second map. You experience more of a lightness when you do the second map. Less mind clutter associated, more clarity on the second map. So what was the same about the two maps is that the troubling situation was the same in the center or in that circle, right? So what this exercise demonstrates is, gets back to what we were saying a little bit earlier, that it's not so much the troubling situation that's causing our body tension and mind clutter, but it's this something else. And that's whether or not we're orienting towards the troubling situation or any of our challenges or life in general in our eye system functioning. So our eye system being overactive and everything sort of being filtered through that, or in this other state, right, that we experienced on the second map. So the way we orient towards things or perceive, think, feel, and even act can shift dramatically once we get the eye system back where it belongs, which is quieted down and in the background. So we did this exercise that we sometimes call Come to Your Senses. The Blocks wrote a book called Come to Your Senses that sort of launched mind-body bridging out to the world. So we think of it as come to your senses or coming to your senses, or sometimes we just call it sensory awareness. But when we simply engaged our senses, we experienced that shift towards what we call natural functioning. So natural functioning is simply our mind-body state when we're engaged in the present moment without the interference or hindrance of the eye system, without the eye system corrupting the present moment. Because that's really what I think of as what the eye system does. When it gets overactive, it starts to corrupt the moment with its own business. So it tries to insert that idealism onto the moment, and it begins to corrupt it. Because the moment just is what it is. So our natural functioning is our natural mind-body state. We don't have to do anything special to reach it. When we are in our state of natural functioning, we have full access to our goodness, our ability to heal, to our own inner power and wisdom. And for those of you that take a spiritual orientation, there's spiritual connotations that we just feel connected to our source. And that source can be any number of things as we experience it, right? Spirituality is a broad thing. Those of you that attended our last TCI session that Dr. Oxhandler did, she did a great job of talking to us about that. So that's what's wonderful, is we don't have to be anything special or do anything special to deserve or get to our natural functioning. All we have to do is quiet the I system, and our natural functioning spontaneously arises and comes back online. So we theorize that when we're in natural functioning, that's when our executive functioning is fully available to us. That's when the most powerful parts of our brain are accessible. That's when our inner wisdom is accessible to us. And we can problem solve. We're more resilient in natural functioning, and much less resilient when the I system is running the show. So that's again the essence of mind-body bridging, is experience when we've shifted out of natural functioning into that state of significant mind clutter and body tension, and recognize that and use mind-body bridging practices to shift back to natural functioning. We think of that as the mind-body bridging, or MBB shift.
I might want to add that we're always in natural functioning, always, unless a requirement gets violated. And once a requirement gets violated, then the I system becomes overactive. I wanted to mention one thing real quick, Derek. In the chat, someone mentioned I missed map 1 because I was late, but map 2 equals conflicted. And that's a really great example. Some of you may have had map 2, may have not experienced the shift. And so if you didn't experience the shift, don't worry about it. All that means is in map 2, you continue to have an overactive identity system. But when you do this process, this two-step process of acknowledging, learning about what the requirement was that activated the I system, you did a mind-body map of the troubling situation, you acknowledged, and then you came to your senses, it resulted in the shift. And so if a person came late and only did the second map, they're not going to have gone through the process of map 1, and therefore they won't have that shift. So thank you for sharing that, because that kind of shows an example of what it takes to get that shift. Number 1, acknowledge the identity system and what it's doing and the requirement. And number 2, come to your senses.
Right. Great, Kevin. I'm glad that you clarified that. So again, this is another way of, thinking about the mind-body bridging shift, is we're actually shifting the parts of our brain that we're using. Some early work that's been done by some neuroscientists have shown that when we move from I system overactivity to natural functioning, there are real shifts that have taken place. Now, this is just really early research, and the neuroscience isn't very developed, but what is very developed is the reality of the shift that we experience. That is very well developed and documented. So it'll be fun to see, where the neuroscience kind of stuff goes down the road. But for right now, we have a pretty good idea of what's happening inside the mind or the brain and the body, but we certainly know how it feels when we experience that. One of the another ways that, and I'll just say just a little bit more about bridging awareness, and then I'll do this other thing that, it's just simple. Anytime we feel that mind clutter and body tension ratcheted up, our senses are always available to us. We can always let our senses come to us. So this could be as simple as listening to water go down the drain, when we're showering in the morning and our mind is swirling and lots of body tension and mind clutter. Just time to listen to the water, feel it on your back, feel it on your face. As you're driving into work, just listening to the sounds that are happening naturally around you. So, I mean, you could do it anywhere. When we teach this to kids in the elementary school, in the school setting, we talk about this in terms of small mind and big mind. So we can always recognize, even the younger kids can learn to recognize when they're in their small mind and learn that they can use their, what we call our superpower senses when we're teaching it to kids, to shift back to their big mind, to their natural functioning. And so we
So
can
come to your senses. So come to your senses is essentially the same thing as bridging awareness. Bridging awareness is the technical term that we use, but bridging awareness simply means we're bridging the mind and body together through awareness of our senses.
Yep, and it's that simple. So this is a bit of a difference from what we're doing in traditional mindfulness practices, which we're sort of trying to develop as something of a detached awareness from our thoughts and not over-identify with them. What we're doing here is just simply using our senses as a way of quieting that I system activity down and returning back to natural functioning. So that's the action we're after with the bridging awareness. So again, we can be aware of background sounds, just what we're touching, awareness of colors and shapes, awareness of your body. It's just cultivating that awareness as we go throughout our day. But that bridging awareness on its own is not sufficient to overcome the counterproductivity of the overactive I system. And the other tools that we teach in mind-body bridging that are more metacognitive tools are also necessary to help us really get a handle on our overactive I systems. But bridging awareness is very, very powerful, especially as we just do it throughout our day. Right? Oftentimes, people will use these sensory practices as what I call rescue tools. When they become super dysregulated, loaded up with mind clutter and body tension. And of course, it's fine to use them then. That's great. We want people to do that. But what we're after is that people are doing it more moment to my moment throughout their day. And as they do that, they'll find themselves becoming less and less super dysregulated as they use these and the metacognitive practices. Okay.
Yeah, what we want people to remember is that in order to really diffuse or cause your identity system to lose power, it takes both practices, the bridging awareness, which is also awareness of your body tension, if you didn't notice that, as well as the metacognitive or acknowledging your identity system's overactive. Oh, that's my system going right now, and acknowledging the requirements that were violated.
Right. Okay. Questions at this point? Things you would like us to clarify? Any of you that are, we're happy to take questions. Another little fun way that I like to teach this, and it's harder to do on Zoom than in person, is with this flashlight. So what do we use a flashlight for? Throw it in the chat. What do we use a flashlight for?
See in the dark, to help us see in the dark.
Help us
See
see
in the
more
dark.
clearly.
Overcome darkness, find our way in the dark.
Good. Yeah, it's the utility of the flashlight is when we're using it for a task in the moment at hand, like finding our way down a dark trail. For me, it's I often use this particular flashlight most to try and find little earrings that have been dropped in our closet that I share with my spouse. So I'm down on the floor looking in the carpet in this sort of dark closet for the backs of earrings or little small earrings, right? In other words, there's a task I'm using the energy from this flashlight to just be focused on a task at hand. So the power of the flashlight's energy is experienced when that energy is out away from me, just doing something, and the flashlight's helping me do it, right? That's natural functioning. When our awareness is out, away, engaged in the moment, taking care of that moment, the energy of our awareness is applied to that. And that's natural functioning. That's just what we experience. And I think we can think back to our childhood, most of us, where natural functioning was just sort of more, I think, what we stayed in more often. And, we were just doing. We were just playing in the mud or walking in the grass, or I mean, we were just doing the moment without overthinking it, right? And then as we get older, our eye system gets more and more scaffolded and ratcheted up, and it draws us in more. But what happens in eye system functioning is we take that awareness and we turn it against ourselves. So now this is in my face. And what do you imagine this is like, trying to go through my day with this in my face? Throw it in the chat. I'm not going to do this very long because then I see spots.
Overstimulated.
Yeah, that's a great word. Yeah. What else? If that flashlight, distracted, blinded. Very good. Certainly distorted, right? My ability to see, perceive, think is being distorted. It's being hindered because my awareness has been turned against myself. And yeah, I'm very much blinded to the truth or the reality around me, right? So that in this analogy, the light energy in the eye system is its requirements, and we don't have time to get further into it today, but what happens is the requirements, when they're violated, start to spin up storylines or stories about that violated requirement. And so then these stories get running in my head, and that just ratchets up that awareness being turned against myself. So that's what happens when we have that second head thing start to happen to us, is we get so caught up in the storylines that our eye system is generating, and it's all striving towards meeting the requirement. And that really causes us to get in our own way. And so all the action of mind-body bridging, which we just sort of scratched the surface on today, is about flipping that flashlight, metaphorically. Oh, I feel that. I feel that happening to me in the form of mind clutter and body tension, just like my eyes really felt that light coming directly into them and started to, do their thing. I could feel that. So we can learn to feel that happening to us, and then use the practices, two of which you've learned about today: recognizing requirements, and, well, of course, recognizing your eye system is overactive. So body tension and mind clutter are your signals. Recognizing the requirements that have been violated, and then using sensory awareness or bridging awareness, or whatever you want to call it, that will help us flip that flashlight back around. Good question, Mark. Ever possible to change an eye system requirement or let them go? So I'll answer, and then Kevin can chime in, but not really. And that's not really what we're after. We're not after, like we might be in some cognitive behavioral therapies, going after cognitive distortions and those sorts of things and trying to alter them. That's not what we're after in mind-body bridging. We're just after awareness of them. So we all have requirements. Whether they're realistic or not realistic is always in the eye of the beholder, right? So that's we're not going to get rid of them, nor do we don't strive to get rid of them in mind body bridging. We just simply strive to build awareness of them and befriend them. So Kevin, your thoughts?
Yeah, these are two great questions. In fact, the second question is really awesome as well. So on the first question, our eye system is not broken. We're not damaged. It's not broken. It's the way it is. It's the way and you can't fix it. You can't make it more appropriate or this or that. You just need to understand it and understand it for what it is. This is what it does. Okay. And this is what it does when it becomes overactive. It was never intended to be the pilot. It was intended to be a co-pilot. It gives us information, but it was never intended to drive the show. Our executive function was intended to drive the show, our natural functioning self. Okay. The second question is interesting, perhaps over time letting a certain requirement go. It's more about releasing. Think of yourself when we have a requirement that's so tied to our identity, we're clinging to it. We're clinging to it with everything we have. It's like if any of you have ever heard of the monkey traps they used to use to capture live monkeys, they'd make a box, they'd make a hole in the box, then they'd put a nut inside, and the monkey would put their hand in the box, grab the nut, and was trapped, would never let go of it. And as long as we're clinging to our requirements, we're just like the monkeys in the monkey trap. We're trapped, okay? But as we learn to diffuse the requirements and to release our grip on it, so we're not clinging to it so much, it frees us. We become free. And that's all the monkey needed to do was let go of the nut, let go of the nut. So the second question actually is really a good one.
Yeah, that's great. And I will add to that I think what happens over time with requirements is we just become much more friendly with them and we let them go much more quickly. So it's not that we're letting them go forever, but the experience over time with the practices, they definitely suck you into your eye system much less regularly. Or maybe not at all. Maybe you've learned to befriend the requirement, get to know it, and diffuse it so well that it just doesn't, I mean, it's still there, but it just doesn't suck you in.
Yeah, you're never going to get rid of requirements. So we don't beat ourselves up for wanting to grab the nut, but we work hard to not give in to the need so much.
There you go.
Yeah, it just is what it is. The eye system is what it is. It does what it does. And as long as you understand it and shine the light of awareness on what it's doing, it loses its power because you know what it is.
Right.
It's like the boogeyman when we were young. Remember? We go sleep at night and the lights were off. Oh, the boogeyman's gonna get us. Oh no, what's under my bed? But as soon as mom turned the light on and shined the light under the bed, it was like, oh, that's what it is. It's the cat or it's whatever.
Yeah. It's the reality, right? Great
What's
question.
interesting is the identity system, when it gets overactive, it adds things on that aren't there. Or it keeps us from seeing things that are there. It takes things away. So it adds things on or takes things away. And oftentimes I like to think about mind body bridging as like Michelangelo when he made the statue of David. David was already in the stone. All Michelangelo did was chip away everything that was not David. And that's what we're doing with mind body bridging and doing these maps. We're chip away everything that's not a part of our true nature, that's not who we really are. And as we chip those things away, what's left is our natural true self. It emerges, it comes out. And when we have that MBB shift, we naturally do better. We didn't have to, a lot of you could see on your map too, you didn't have to stretch to become positive. It automatically happened. We didn't tell you to be more positive on map 2. It just happened.
Right. Well, we're getting close to time here, and we just want to emphasize that what we're after is using using our eye system signals like a compass that can guide us. So our eye system becomes less of a hindrance and becomes a friend. It can guide us. Oh, yep. I see my eye system's getting overactive. what is that about? That's interesting, right? It's just, I'm not broken, I'm not damaged. It's just like, this is interesting that I'm having this reaction to this, what is that about? So it's just looking at requirements and looking at the storylines that are spinning off of that. And you can sort of take a step back from that almost, and this is a bit akin to some of the mindfulness practices and the traditional wisdoms. You can step back from it and see it, like, oh, look what's happening to me. Isn't that something, right? And you can experience yourself as much more than what is happening to you, in that, what's happening with your eye system. That's just part of your experience, but you can step back from that. And that process of recognizing that, developing that awareness, causes you to just shift away from that into just being that true self, moment by moment.
And if you haven't noticed, I have put in the chat a couple of times the MBB Principles and Practices workbook that these exercises were taken from today.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin, for that. And again, I think in the chat, and Teresa will send out also all of this stuff as a follow-up to this, so don't worry about it if you weren't able to get it right out of the chat. Just by way of wrapping up, here's just some of the main things we've been over today. Yep, she'll send out the workbook. Thanks, Brooke. And so we've learned to map our eye system, and mapping is really important. We think we can map and learn about our eye system in our head, but it's hidden from us, and the mapping helps us bring it out into our awareness. So doing mapping regularly is part of the practices. That's really important. Recognizing our eye system, it's mind clutter and body tension. Thinking about our requirements, recognizing those, what are the shoulds or musts that were violated, getting to know those, and then using our bridging awareness or sensory awareness practices as one of the tools to help us shift back to natural functioning. The overall goal, of course, in this is to live life less dominated by the eye system and live life more guided in our natural functioning. And we believe and have experienced that when that happens, that's where we are best positioned to heal and grow and learn and develop and just be okay that we're a work in progress and knowing that we're not damaged or broken. So thank you for spending time with us. We'll turn it back over to Teresa and for closing comments.
Yes, thank you, Derek and Kevin, for this great presentation and training about mind-body bridging. It's something that I've known about over the years, and I always appreciate hearing how to do mind-body bridging and apply it to even my own life. So thank you for that. In the chat, like Kevin said, he has put in the flyer and the flyer about their next training sessions, and then also the workbook. I will be sending both of those out via email and my follow-up for each of you. So it's okay if you didn't get them, like he said. And then I just also put in a link to the mind-body bridging certification process if you are interested in becoming a certified practitioner of mind-body bridging. You can, and that's where you get more information. And then if you are interested in getting continuing education, I have just put the evaluation link into the chat. That will also be sent to my follow-up email. But I know that some of you all like to do those kind of immediately and while it's all fresh in your mind. So you can complete the evaluation there. And you do have to do that to get continuing ed. And then the last link I'm going to put in here is the link to the next upcoming continuing education session. The next session is about trauma-informed practice, and it will be presented by Dr. Vonda Jump Norman. And that will be happening on January, just a second, yep, January 19th. Had to check the date on that. If you all have any questions for myself or even for Derek or Kevin and would like to stay on, you are more than welcome to remain on the call. But I will also be showing here in just a second. There we go. These are the social media links for the Transforming Communities Institute and USU Social Work. If you want to stay up to date, these are great options for just getting our posts and reminders about our continuing education opportunities. There are other opportunities that are not sponsored by us that we share about on those platforms. But we hope that you all will come again and that we can see you at our next one. And that you will stay engaged with the Transforming Communities Institute and USU Social Work. But otherwise, we are done with today's session, and we thank you all for coming.